Welcome to another episode of vBrownbag APAC. I'm your host, Brett Johnson, and tonight, once again, we're joined by Pravesh, who will be going through some more of the objectives for the Microsoft 74409 exam. Tonight, we'll be looking at virtual machine management. Now, just before we hand this over to Pravesh, we'll go through a few quick notes. So, if you want to follow vBrownbag and see what we're up to, we've got a range of different Twitter handles here you can follow, as well as using the hashtag vBrownbag. Now, we have a few different broadcasts depending on the region that they're done. So we've got the APAC one, which is tonight, EMEA, LATAM, which is in Spanish, and the US one. So I'll hand this over to you, Pravesh. I'll give you presenter and let you take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Brett. Let me just fire up my screen so I can show you. Oh, and should fire up at any moment. Are you able to see it now?
Yep, that's come through.
Perfect. All right, let's get started, guys. Hello, everyone. My name is Pravesh Khana. As I said last week, based in Melbourne, Australia, I'm a technology enthusiast and an active blogger. During my day job, I work as a senior systems engineer for one of Australia's leading bank on technologies like Microsoft Hyper-V, System Center Configuration Manager, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, and VMware ESXi. You can follow me on my blog, it-ninja.com.au, or on Twitter at PraveshSK2012. Following on from last week's presentation on Hyper-V exam 7409 from Microsoft, this is the part 2 of that same exam, concentrating more towards the virtual machine manager or the VM management side of it within the Microsoft world. In contrast to last week, this one will be more, this particular session will be more concentrated towards the demos rather than just on slides. For people who have missed out on last week's presentation, here is a link from last week's presentation on vBrownbag, or you can always catch it out on iTunes. Again, following up from last week, the target audience for this particular exam are IT pros. The technology is Windows Server 2012 R2. Exam format is multiple choices, hotspots, and the skills measured across this whole exam are all the way from configuring Hyper-V, configuring virtual machines with high availability, implement a server virtualization infrastructure, and monitor and maintain server virtualization infrastructure. Moving on to System Center Virtual Machine Manager. What is this? Well, it is Microsoft answers to vCenter Server what ESXi has from the VMware side. So it is about managing your virtual machine workload rather than logging on individually to each of the hosts. You have to actually, you have a single pane where you can monitor all of your VM workload. Interestingly enough, you can not only just manage the Hyper-V workload, you can even do with ESXi and Citrix XenApp servers. As long as they're added into Hyper-V, you can just manage them from a single pane view. The current version of Virtual Machine Manager is Virtual Machine Manager 2012 R2, and as of last month, if I remember correctly, the Roller Pack 9 came out, which contains a lot of hot fixes and feature fixes and issues and bugs that they have resolved. So if anyone who is trying to implement it within their environment or to play around with it, I would highly recommend to roll it up to the latest Roller Pack to make sure you are covered with any foreseen issues. There are 5 main components of Virtual Machine Manager. Obviously, one is the management server itself, which is similar to what you have with the vCenter servers in VMware environment for people who are familiar with that sort of things. Obviously, there would have to be a database, and being a Microsoft product, they recommend SQL Server. Surprise, surprise. There is a management console, which can be installed on any machine. So on a day-to-day management, you will have this virtual machine management console installed on your workstation or laptop, and then connect to the management server, and then manage things from there rather than the requirement to log on to the management server each time to do something.
So is that management?
You also have something.
Sorry, is that management console very similar to like running RSAT when you manage any other server?
Yes, but instead of just RSAT, which is a big majority of them were MMC, this is a full-blown application. And I believe it is written in, I could be wrong on this one, but I think it is Silverlight, but I'm not 100% on that one. Library servers, that's another component. Now, library server is a place where VMM saves all its, your virtual hard disk images, for example, for your templates, for your PowerShell scripts or things like that that you want to run for maintenance and things like that. You can all save all that information. Oh, even ISOs, for example. So you want to build a virtual machine using ISOs. So library servers can be similar to what you have with the data stores, but only for the admin repository rather than just day-to-day stuff within a data store in VMware side. And obviously, you have with any other Microsoft, like every other Microsoft product, you have PowerShell command line available, and it is very elaborative. I mean, there are things that are not that straightforward, but that are not available to you on day one when you start looking into it. But as you get more exposure to this PowerShell, you'll find a lot more features, like I did when I first started looking into it. Moving on to the next one, the maximums. That's another important thing to know with regards to your exam, but because they may throw up questions on, oh, you have this version, now you're looking to upgrade to this version. What's the best thing you'll achieve out of this? The number of VM hosts supported in the original VMM 2012 was 400, and now in the current 2012 R2, it's been supported up to 1,000 hosts per virtual machine manager. You can manage up to 25,000 virtual machines, whereas in the original version you were only able to do 8,000. You could have 1,000 user roles created. So if you want to segregate the user access and things like that, you can do that. Tenants would be more like your customers. So if you want to segregate your workload based on customer A, customer B, customer C, you can do that. The original version 2012 did not support tenants, but the SP1 onwards and the current 2012 R2 version supports up to 1,000 tenants. You can run up to 250 concurrent jobs. So these are like your maintenance tasks and provisioning your new VMs and things like that, but they can all run in parallel with each other. You can have up to 50 people connected to a given instance of Virtual Machine Manager via PowerShell, via console, and things like that. You can have a job history, which is like what kind of tasks have been run against this particular instance of Virtual Machine Manager. You have a history of 5 million records, and soon I'll show you where exactly to search for these things and things like that. There is an overview of different sections within the Hyper-V Virtual Machine Manager or System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Before I go into and explain each term here, I'll actually quickly jump onto my my test lab machine, which I have configured. Oops, let me share that first. It just started prompting. I haven't shared it with you. 1 second. For some reason, I don't have the window open that actually allows me to share it. Screen sharing. Show application is that one. Are you guys able to see my screen now?
Yeah, that's coming through.
Yep, perfect. So this is my virtual, on the background you see is my Hyper-V host, and I have a VM running on it called WinServer 001. Just couldn't be bothered naming it in a better way, I guess. Install Virtual Machine Manager on it. Now on this environment, obviously, because I don't have many resources on this particular host, so I have installed the Virtual Machine Manager and SQL and everything onto one machine. Ideally, you will have segregated them into different machines. So one dedicated SQL server, one dedicated machine for your virtual machine manager, and then obviously you'll have your lots of consoles and library servers and things like that. Firing up my virtual machine manager, and that is one requirement. It actually talks on port 8100. So you can obviously change things like things, but that is the default port. So if you are in a very secure environment, make sure this particular port is open for communication between the clients or your workstation to the virtual machine manager server. I'm using my current credentials to log on, but you can obviously have a separate account just to do things. So if you have a standard account on your laptop, but then you have to connect using an admin account, you can do that over here. Well, that fires up. Not running an enterprise class hardware, so obviously, hence things are a bit slow. And it fired up. So what we have here is, like most of the 2012 System Center products, on the left-hand side here at the bottom, they have these things called workspaces. So we have a VM and services workspace, a fabric workspace, a library workspace, a job, and a setting workspace. Starting with the most important one, fabric. This is where basically the meat and potatoes of your virtual machine manager sit. This is where you would be adding all your hosts. So in this case, I have one host, my domain, everything is running on it. What you can also do is segregate those hosts within host groups. So I can have labs and production host, or some people may have Melbourne, Sydney host, or client 1, client 2 host, things like that. Whichever way it works out for you, these are just logical separations of hosts. A given host group, the resources within that host groups are contained, and some things cannot go across host groups. So these are more like logical separations on things. And same thing applies when it comes to delegation model and setting role-based access control, RBAC. You can assign permissions based on host groups, and that people will only have access to the things to the host under that host group only. And as I said before, what you can do here is actually add your vCenter servers. I don't have them. And your Citrix servers. Again, I don't have them either. But you can add them and actually use them to manage your non-Microsoft virtual machine workload as well, if you require. It doesn't eliminate the need of having a vCenter or a Citrix Zen server for management, but all it gives you is a single pane of management. In the networking side, sorry, go for it.
When you add a vCenter server, does it allow management tasks, or is it a bit more of a view sort of feature?
It's sort of in depth, but not complete replacement of vCenter servers. So you can do your basic tasks like your VM provisioning and your storage, your migrations and things like that. Obviously, what it will help if you are looking to move the workload between VMware and Hyper-V and vice versa, that becomes a lot easier. But it doesn't, as I said before, it doesn't completely eliminate the need of having a vCenter server. So obviously, vCenter server is very important, and it will remain like that. That won't change.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next important part here is the networking section. Now, networking, you obviously have your resources such as the logical networks, the IP address pools, and load balancers, and these are used to be deployed to the virtual machines and the services. What these are the logical separations of virtual networks within the Hyper-V environment. In my case here, for example, I have created two logical networks, which are one for lab and one for production, which kind of matches my host groups, as I showed before. And between those logical networks, what I have is something called a network site. Now, network site is basically a collection of networks. So in this case, I only have one network site called Labs Melbourne and only have one VLAN assigned to it. which is fine for my environment. But on the other logical network, which is the production one, I may have more than one site, which I don't, again, here, but I do have multiple VLANs assigned to it. So what I can do if I want to is go add another logical network site called Sydney. And this will have a different set of VLAN, so VLAN 40, and that would be 10.0.40.0/24, for example, and things like that. And all these sites, again, can be segregated by the host group. So in this example, it's a production network, so my lab host would not have access to it. So I'll check only the production side of it. And once I do that, see what happens. It pops up the job window and actually tells me what is the current status of this particular job. It got created and everything is all fine. And as we go back again to check the properties, we'll see the network site is created with site Sydney with VLAN. So that was one example of it. What you can also have is a port classification. Now what port classification is, they are the magic mapping of virtual network adapter based on the logical switches and the virtual machines that runs on them. If a virtual machine is moved to a Hyper-V host with a different logical switch, the port classification links in the background, which it actually uses, it actually just does the binding part of it. So to keep it in a simple word, port classifications are more like, all right, this is my high bandwidth network, this is my low bandwidth network, this is one for my iSCSI adapter, this one is for my backup, for example. So it is kind of way of providing like say traffic segmentation within a single fat pipe network, if that makes sense. What you can also do is actually create, and which I'll probably introduce a bit later on as well, is you can create something called an IP pool. So you can have your virtual machine manager assign a bunch of IP networks. So you can have your 192.168.0.1 to 0.200. The whole range is available to VMM. What it will do is any virtual machine which has been assigned to that particular logical network and to that pool would be able to use the IP pools automatically out of that. And so you don't have to go in and manually assign those IP networks. And the good thing is, for a virtual machine to use the IP pool in here, it would appear as if it's a static network. So if you go and check the properties on the network card on the virtual machine, it will be stated as a static IP, but essentially it's not. It is actually a dynamic IP. If you delete that machine, and you can claim back that IP IP address back. So it makes things a little bit easier. What you also have in Virtual Machine Manager is, and again, you need to have the supported storage vendor to do that, and most of the bigger ones out there, they have compliant storage, which provides something called SMIS provider. What it does is actually, if you assign a pool of storage to Virtual Machine Manager and say, for example, an EMC network, you have assigned it LUN, an EMC LUN with fiber channel and with using spinning disks, and again another LUN with flash array. You can have your gold and silver platform, storage platform based on that classification. And what you can do is actually, all right, I'll create my virtual machine. Now it will use my, but this is a gold rated virtual machine. All right, now you can set rules and say, all right, because it's a gold rated machine, it will automatically go and use the storage on the flash array. And based on the usage, provided you have storage available in the back end, Virtual Machine Manager can automatically provision more and more storage for you. So it takes that pain out of day-to-day management of storage side of things. Under the providers and storage is where you can actually add your storage providers. And this is the place where you actually add your storage devices. Same for the arrays and the file server. So if you have a SMB file server, this is where you will add them. I don't have it, again, because I don't have an enterprise class hardware. I don't have that thing available here, but it is super simple to add those things. Few clicks and you are up and ready and ready to go. Flicking back to my presentation. Oops, 1 second. For some reason, it is just, oh, there it is. Come on. Okay. So we've covered the Fabric workspace, a majority of it. I haven't showed you the library, so let's get back again. I'll actually share this whole screen rather than just going back and forward all the time. That'll do. One thing we can also do is actually have a library service. In this case, I have a library service on this particular host, but you can always add your Windows scale out file service as library service, or you can actually have your standard NAS files and add it here. All it is a collection of storage space where the VMM would save all its ISO files and things like that, and VHD templates. You can also have Pixie service, which would be used for provisioning of your Hyper-V host. So you can use your virtual machine manager to provision brand new bare metal hardware as a Hyper-V host. But in order for those Hyper-V hosts to boot, you would require a Pixie server. You can add them here. In this environment, I also have an update server, which is basically using Microsoft WSUS server or Windows Software Update Services server to actually patch all your Hyper-V hosts. And this way, you can actually you can manage your day-to-day management of your patching within your Hyper-V environment. As I said, vCenter service is where they get added, or the other VM service. In this case, there is only one. That's what you're saying. Going back to my presentation, and the next one we're talking about is the VMs and Services workspace. This is another important one of these workspaces within Virtual Machine Manager. Number one, it gives you a high-level view of all these virtual machines that have been running in your environment. You can control them from this particular pane. So power on, done. Power on, done. As you can see, do all that stuff from here. Obviously, I can do it using the Hyper-V Manager on the actual host, which is here. And as you can see, these VMs are powering on now, slowly, as I demonstrated last week. You can create snapshots, you can create checkpoints, you can manage those checkpoints. So if once my my Linux VM is up, I can create a checkpoint on it and name it whatever. Demo checkpoint. Create. Boom. And now it actually goes and creates that checkpoint. And in the background, if I go back to my Hyper-V Manager, you can see it's creating checkpoint 39-40%. So once it does, it actually comes and reports here. You can manage those checkpoints and merge them and things like that. If I had more than one service, this is the place where you would actually go and migrate those virtual machines to another host. What I can also do is, in this case, I have a WinPC 002, which is not doing much. And once it's stopped, it has to be in the stop state. You can actually store it in the library. And basically what you're doing is actually making it, as a template. So if I go and go, oh, all right, let me save it here. Let's go ahead. It will store it. It will go ahead and basically upload the whole of your virtual machine into the network. This is only a small one. I don't think it actually had much data onto it. That's why it's so quick. But usually, depending on how big your VHD file is, it actually saves the whole virtual machine onto your library. And once it finishes, we'll go back and have a quick look on how it looks within the library. Oh, there you go, completed successfully. And as you can see, it's now disappeared from virtual machine view, because it's no longer a virtual machine, it's become a template. So if you go back to our fabric, or sorry, into the library, one thing we will see into our library servers is, there it is, a Win7PC002. So we can actually use this to deploy a brand new virtual machine. All it will be is a template of the an image of this particular virtual machine. So whatever the memory size, whatever the network this one is connected to, whichever the memory size, whatever the number of vCPUs it will have, the other machine will have the same. However, one important thing to remember, before you actually create a template like this, make sure, if it's a Windows virtual machine, make sure you perform a generalization using the sysprep utility, especially if you have Windows 2008 and backwards, because what happens is Windows uses something called a system GUID or SID. And that can, if you are, especially if you're in a networked environment or in a domain, that can cause issues, because then both servers, both computers may have, or more than one computer can have same SIDs. And if they both come up at the same time and try to talk to the network, obviously now you have two copies of the same thing. Which one is the one you're intending to talk to? So it can cause a bit of confusion. So always run the sysprep utility to generalize it, and actually wipes out that information and creates a new number for each of the copies of the virtual machine. So, yep. What you will also see here is within my library, and before actually, sorry, I'm jumping guns here, but I'll go back to my VM and services first and show you what else is there. I also have the VM networks all available to my virtual machines. In this example, I only have one, because obviously it's a smaller environment, I'm demoing things. But you can also change views and see based on the virtual machines which one is connected to which. As you can see, all of my virtual machines are connected to the vSwitch external. This particular demo PC is not connected to anything, but last week I actually created a new VM which was connected to an internal switch. Obviously an internal switch or a private switch would not be available here. It wouldn't be able to talk to anything else. If you have an Azure subscription, you can actually use that to manage your migrate your workload between your Azure and on-premises Hyper-V. So, but I do have it, but in order to demo that, I actually will have to show you my Azure subscription ID, and obviously need a certificate. Didn't want to do that on video, so didn't want to be demoed here. Cloud is another one where you have basically a single view of your entire environment. So this will show you if you have, say, 10 hosts with a terabyte RAM each and with 100 terabyte storage, what you will see is 100 times 10 and 10 times 10 memory, 100 times 10 storage, and as many number of CPUs available. All of them would be aggregated here and will be demonstrated to you as one pane of glass. So what you see is whatever capacity you have available across the board, not just per guest or per host or per cluster and things like that. Within the fabric, you can also what you can also do is create a cluster, a Hyper-V cluster, which is basically built upon a Windows failover clustering. So underlying technology is Windows failover clustering, but Virtual Machine Manager would be the one managing it for moving the resources between each of them. What you can also do is create a service. Now, what a service is basically a collection of virtual machines. So if you have a three-tiered application where you have a SQL server, a middleware, and a web application on top, what you can do is create 3 virtual machines, tie them into a service, and make sure the order of startup would be SQL first, middleware then, and web at the last. And you have given it a pool of resources that would be available. You can do that over here. Where would you create it? Things like that. I don't have any templates created here, but you can obviously create one. And when it fires up, and you can, as you can see here, you can create a 2-tier application, a single machine, or a 3-tier application. And when it decides to come up, and over here I can actually create the application with a name, what kind of CPU it will have, how many NICs it will be connected to. But what will happen is, as a service, it would actually act as one single unit rather than 3 separate virtual machines, if it makes sense.
So for the people who come from a VMware world, that sounds a lot like a vApp sort of thing where you can have your...
Correct. Yep, that's exactly right.
So will that include with the service that, one will boot and then the other sort of control a specific boot order for those VMs?
Yep, exactly. So if you can modify the properties of each of them, as you can see, they're third tier, second tier, and all that. You can set up the hardware configuration for each of them individually. You can set up, like if, for example, you have a separate requirement for your templates, for your admin passwords. If you have to have product keys, obviously you, in a large enterprise environment, you'll have something like a system center configuration manager to manage all this. But if you not that big environment and you want to still manage all that stuff, you can do all here. If you are running a SQL Server, you can actually assign, so I'll just show you quickly. You can set up all your instance IDs, all the SQL Server specific configuration can be done over here. If you can even put some quotas, so it's similar to what you do in VMware side, where you actually assign quotas to the subsections within the app, vApps and things like that. So it's quite similar. And I won't save anything because we don't need to. Save and validate, and it'll go ahead and make sure it's all happy, and then you can close it. Moving on to the next slide. Again, I've already shown you, one important thing that I haven't shown you yet is the profiles. What are profiles? Basically an extension to what you just saw with the vApps. Within the library space, you can actually go and define your, you can do within your fabric space and storage, networking. I just had a memory blank for a second. There we go, profiles. So this is the place where you can actually define your hardware profile. So like I was talking before, you have a gold-rated VM, a silver-rated VM, and platinum-rated VM, for example. I can create those hardware profiles. So in this case, it will be a gold profile. It's a generation 1 or generation 2. If you want to know more about it, remember last week we talked about it. Any details on that particular one? What will it conclude? So in this case, I'll give it like 6, 8 CPUs, 8 gig of RAM, and things like that. It's a better looking machine. I'll add more RAM and things like that. Add more storage to it. What networks it would be connected to? Obviously, it is connected to my 10 gigabit, super fast network. Things like that I can specify here. You can have a secure boot enabled, obviously because it's a Gen 2 machine. You can give it a higher priority because now it's a gold-rated machine. Obviously, the customer is very important. They should be all happy. You can give it a higher memory weight. So obviously, when there's a memory contention, it will give this machine a more priority than over the others. So this is my gold-rated template for my hardware. And I can do similar for my silver-rated, which is not that good. Or maybe make it 10, where it is a generation 1, it's only running with 1 CPU, it only 512 RAM, and it can only run on, for example, Hyper-V. Whereas the gold one, let's say it can run on Hyper-V and VMware. Why not? So it has both of those things available to it. So if you have multiple virtualization technology available to it, you can actually choose between them. Same thing applies for your guest OS profiles. So if I go, and I was showing you before, if you want to create your operating system based on the selection down here, it will automatically configure your virtual machine operating system profile for that kind of setup. So I have a 2012 environment with, and what I can also do is WinSVR start. So what we'll automatically do is actually create all my servers using this particular guest OS profile. They will automatically be called Win server and followed by a random set of characters and numbers. So if in my environment I have that kind of requirement, it will automatically do it for me. If I have a specific password to use, I can set that up. So what happens is all the VMs created using this particular guest OS profile will automatically get this local admin password. I can set up the time zones. So in my case, it would be all Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, which is further down GMT plus 10. Oh, all of them will have the same. I don't have to go and change individually. I can even have an answer file. So people who are familiar with the Microsoft server OS or client OS provisioning, you can also have things like an answer file where you have all those things available to you, already answered. This is my license key. This is my, if it's in a server, what features and role would be available, things like that would be within the answer file. It will automatically go and run them and apply them for you. So you don't have to do it individually. If you want to perform a domain join, you can do all here. What happens is that once the VM gets provisioned, it will automatically get joined to that particular domain. Obviously, for that, you need to provide either a run as account or provide a set of domain user credentials, which has access to Active Directory to be able to join workstations or servers. I won't save it because it's just a demo here. Again, you can do something similar for physical computer profile, which is more for your Hyper-V hosts. So if you are doing your bare metal deployment of your Hyper-V hosts, you can do that using here. And which OS files would you use? So in this case, a virtual hard disk file. Well, remember we used one. Either these, we had this in the library. We can. If we already have a set of templates which we may have uploaded in the past, would come here, and we can just add them. Again, hardware configuration could be the ones that we have defined before. OS configuration, again, same ones that we had before. Any other host specific details. Let's pick up something for this part of demonstration. Any particular management NICs that would be connected to. If you have any specific, so as you saw, these logical networks that I had configured before, let's say this is a lab network, it will automatically get created and added and get joined to those logical networks. Again, same OS configuration that I can do. Oh, well, I need to provide it a domain, and it will say, no, you can't run without doing a run as account. Well, I don't have it, but I've just added myself in there as an admin. Must be specified, which is here. So I just provided a demo password, and you can actually, what this one is actually asking is, by default, where would your virtual machines be placed once this host becomes available? Where would you want these to be provisioned? Now, in most cases, if you have a clustered environment, that would be C cluster storage, and underneath you will have a mount point. That would be your cluster shared volume. Or if you have just a standard fiber channel, so that would be your D drive, your V drive, your X drive, whatever you have in your environment, you'll add them over here. We'll just leave it blank and create one. Another very, very important thing, which I wanted to demo here before we run out of time, is actually about managing your day-to-day host patching. I've actually mentioned this on my blog a couple of days ago, so you can actually check out these step-by-step details over there if you really want to. But this is also very important when it comes to your exam. As I told you before, I have added a WSUS server within my Fabric space. I have added an update server, which is just running Windows software update service. Again, in this case, it is installed locally on the box. However, if you have in your environment, you have a WSUS server installed on a different machine, what you do require in this case is the VMM server would have at least the WSUS server console installed onto it. Not everything, just a console. That is the minimum requirement. Once you have done that and you actually go and add your resources, you go add an update server, provide the right credentials, it will add that machine over here. On the management side of it, what I can do is I have two options. I have an update catalog, which will contain all the updates available to me, and an update baseline. Now, what are baselines? Baselines are basically a collection, a logical collection of all the updates that you deem required for your particular environment. So just for argument's sake, if you have a particular patch that actually causes issues and you've seen with your host and you go, no, we do not require this particular hotfix to be installed on any of our hosts, but we require the other 200 that came out of Microsoft in last month, you can create that in a baseline, exclude that one patch, include the other 199, and create it as a baseline for this month, this quarter, this 6 month, this whole year. In this example, I have created 3 baselines for February 2016, January 2016, March 2016. Let's create one baseline for my April month. Just call it baseline April 2016, just to keep things simple. On this pane, you actually will have to go and add all those updates. Now, as you can see, this will give you everything that came out of Microsoft. Now, if I sort them by release date, on the top you have things from 2012. Well, most of the people would have that thing, hopefully will have them installed within the operating system and the virtual machine manager. So in this case, what I only need is anything that came out in April. So those, and you can select these multiple hotfixes by using your Control or Shift keys. If I want to exclude one or two, like in this case, hold down the Control key and click, just exclude them. Click Add, and those are the ones that automatically got added. I'll go next, and which particular host groups or the infrastructure that this particular baseline would be applicable to. Let's say, for example, I want to do a testing on my lab environment first before I go into my production. So I only check my lab for now, and later on I can go ahead and check prod. I can change properties of this particular baseline. It says only 10 lab updates available for this particular baseline. Click Finish. Now, another important tip. Just because I have created this doesn't mean it will be available straight away. Sometimes I have noticed is if I go back into my fabric and try to scan this particular my host against this particular baseline straight away, it doesn't work. Give it about 2-3 minutes to settle down and make sure everything is populated within the SCVMM database. It knows about it. Say 5 minutes or so, and then it works perfectly. So what I'll show you here in this example of the new baseline I have just created, it is available to the lab host. To be able to see the compliance reason of it, I have compliance status of it, I have to go to the compliance tab on the top here, and that shows me, as you can see, let me expand it. It is compliant against January, February, and March, but it doesn't know anything about the April. That is because it hasn't scanned it yet. If I want to go and scan it, I have to click on the host itself and go click Scan. And what it's doing is now scanning, as you can see here. It's scanning. It'll take about a minute or so and compare the host, which is in the background here, against the particular the hotfixes that we have just defined, and we'll say, are you compliant or non-compliant? And in a minute, we'll see that it will come back as non-compliant because I haven't deployed those particular hotfixes to this host. And if we wait long enough, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No, count again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Takes forever, isn't it? When you want it to rush, it doesn't happen. No, it's still running. But in the meanwhile, what you can do is actually check the status of this particular job in the background. As you can see, to bring the another tip that people sometimes ask is, oh, I accidentally closed the job window, how do I get it back? Well, this job window will only show you what job has been running. To be able to bring that job window back, you have to click on the jobs task on the top right here, and that will actually bring that window back. So don't panic if you just accidentally close it and go, oh, where did it go? Where did it disappear? While it's scanning, the other thing I'll show you here is the PowerShell window with regards to the virtual machine manager. So the button you see here with regards to PowerShell will automatically launch you into the PowerShell version of virtual machine manager, so you don't have to go and import the modules for it. It takes a few seconds to load, but when it does, and I think it is, the scanning has finished in the background. I can just see that, and there you go. This particular host is non-compliant as we expected. What we can do now is actually based on our, obviously we have to follow our change management. If you have that in your environment, you can remediate it at a agreed time. So go ahead and apply those. Sorry, go ahead.
So with the remediation, you may be just about to get into it. Will it automatically move the VMs from the, like, evacuate the host and do its remediation if restarts needed?
Yep, that is the idea. Like, you can, if you have a clustered environment, in this case I don't, but you have to have a clustered environment, because then you have more than one host and it will automatically move things around. So what would you, like, you have the option to either live migrate things across, or you can just, if you, for example, have a lab environment, you'll just go save state, it'll shut down the VMs or with whatever the running state is, restart the host, and when the host comes up, the VMs will start up automatically based on their settings. And I can actually check do not restart and go remediate. And in the background, it will go ahead and start deploying those things. I don't know if I can actually see that in the task manager in here on the host itself. And you can see the activity has gone up because it is, and if I'm not wrong, it should actually have something in the, I think it's called trusted installer. There you go, Windows Update. There it is.
Yeah.
Windows module installer. It's doing in all from single pane. Obviously, I can't afford to reboot this particular host because this is where I'm running my VMM from. Going back to, again, presentation again, one important reminder from last week, very useful links which I shared with you last time. Practice labs, very, very important when you're trying to do this particular exam. Make sure you download Windows Server 2012 R2 evaluation. Here's a link to download that from Microsoft site. There's also a very important TechNet article that I have pointed out here, which gives you a very, very good understanding on Hyper-V features with 2012 R2, not the previous versions. The next one is a TechNet article that I've mentioned here. It was originally released for early experts, but it's still valid and have a lot of good content that should be very, very helpful if you're trying to prepare for this particular exam. Obviously, nothing can beat practice tests. So there is one from Pearson VUE called MindHub. This is an official Microsoft certified practice test, not one of those dodgy ones out there. I personally don't endorse them. I don't like them. I hate people who use them all the time because that, in my opinion, devalues the hard work we put in obtaining those certifications. So if you can, please go ahead and try to use this Pearson VUE. There are other official ones available. This is one of the better ones I have used myself, so I can recommend it. Microsoft Virtual Academy, another big resource. Pool of resources when it comes to Hyper-V or other Microsoft technologies, and not to mention a lot of MVPs out there. people who give up their own personal time just to help out community and answer people's question or help share knowledge out in the community. I personally follow these two guys, Aidan Finn and Thomas Mura, who, when it comes to Hyper-V, absolute gun of people, and always very helpful if you ask questions on forum or Twitter. So do follow them. Any other questions in the meanwhile? I think that brings us to the end of the presentation.
I'll open up for any of the unmute everybody and see if anyone has any questions. Nope, seems pretty quiet. So thank you very much, Pravesh, once again for giving your time to teach us a bit more about Hyper-V. There's definitely a lot to learn there, and I think anyone who's coming from a VM world will be able to draw a lot of parallels too from the management.
Yeah, try to try to put my VMware hat on and try to explain it from that point of view. So hopefully everyone will find it interesting. And if you have any questions, guys, please feel free to connect me with my blog or on Twitter and ask questions. And if I don't know anything, I'll try to find out for you. Hopefully if I know it, I'll answer it pretty much straight away. So thank you very much for watching, and thanks, Brett, for giving me the opportunity to present here.
Thank you once again, Pravesh. And this has been another episode of vBrownbag APAC. If you want to see what else is going on, always check out professionalvmware.com. And